I don't think it should be a goal to chase pain. The reason I say face discomfort or be willing to face pain is because the discomfort and the pain usually have a reason, but you're not getting anything like, you know what I'm saying? If you hit yourself or if you do something to yourself, you're not getting anything from that. And I think a lot of people live their lives depressed in a way. Maybe not even depressed, but I think their body is just in this like state, like constantly, like it's internally screaming like I need to like face some discomfort, because we live in a world where we don't have to ever face discomfort. Now we are very blessed in a lot of ways for our living situation, at least in the West, for most people, but even so, it has very big consequences that we never ever really have to face discomfort. I was watching Andrew Huberman, he's some dude, very clever, and he was speaking about how it's a disaster for the human psyche to be able to get like all the dopamine, all the reward, all the this and that with zero effort, because your psychology converges, it condenses into just I will get the pleasure, and like it's just your whole body is just based around this like effortless pleasure. It's why porn is such a disaster for many reasons, but one of them is simply you get the same amount of stimulation as you would back in the day from you know, meeting a whole lot of women and doing all that, but it's like you actually are getting nothing and you're putting no effort into it. So you know, this is a crazy bad effect, because it makes you more anxious, much more anxious. It does make you see women in a certain way. It makes you more depressed usually, etc, etc. It's bad. There's a million reasons you can look up why it's bad for your mental health and your spiritual health. It makes you much more it makes your eyes much more set on pleasure, on the flesh. And the Bible says the mind set on things of the flesh leads to death, and the mindset on things of the spirit leads to life. I think it's not a boring thing, it's a true thing. Saying things on the spirit doesn't mean you have to just completely disconnect from everything. God gives us many gifts, many, you know, things in this life, but you'll find if you take this freedom, which is actually slavery, of like, oh, I can do whatever I want, I can gratify all my desires, it will just make your God your desires, and it will rule you and destroy you and make you depressed and take away what it promises from you. You know, porn takes away your connection, it takes away a lot of how people relate to women, etc. Pride takes away a lot of your actual self-dignity, etc, etc, you know. Jesus came because we're all sinners, and only through him we can truly be forgiven and surrender to God so that he'll transform us, and we have an example to follow about being loving, etc. That makes God our God. What your psychology only focusing on this effortless stuff does, you have absolutely no reason, no motivation, nothing in your body to do something difficult, and it destroys you. It leaves you without purpose, it leaves you without a lot of things. I have a guide, by the way, for quitting porn on my channel. There's a lot of other stuff out there as well. The easy peasy method's very good. Takes away all these mental lies you have. This is the funny thing about facing discomfort, is usually the moment you make the decision to actually face it and you confront it, first of all your brain switches on and you generally feel really good. Not in this like drug way, but in this beautiful clear way, like you have purpose, you have meaning, you feel like a man, you feel fulfilled, or a woman. Secondly, once you face it, it's nowhere near as painful as you expected, and that's like one of my really big life lessons I've just learned just from experience, just surprised me. Even some of the worst, hardest things, I mean, you face the pain, you face the discomfort, you face the challenge, and it's never as bad as it seems. The torture, the real pain, is from knowing that there's something that's genuinely good to do, and sometimes, okay, sometimes your body actually knows that you shouldn't do something, and sometimes God knows that, and it's why to cover all the layers of advice, you just pray to God and just believe in Jesus, faithfully pursue Jesus, because the Bible says Jesus is the only way to God. But oftentimes, this is what I was getting at, the real torture comes from knowing you have to do something good or uncomfortable and not doing it, putting it off, waiting, this and that. Ever had a speaking exam, when you're a little anxious 15-year-old, it's scary, or a school presentation, first day of school, introducing yourself in front of class, hiding away, especially when it's in terms of talking to people and this and that, it makes it worse. It's a very simple psychology concept, which is you look at your threat, you see what it's doing, literally or conceptually, right? If it's literally you're in a group of people presentation, you don't look at the floor, you don't hide away, you look at your threat, you know what it's up to, you know they're actually not trying to kill you, they're not trying, you know what I mean? And if they are, you can do something about it. So it's if you do that, it really calms down the anxiety, it goes back to nature. If you look at an animal, you're less scared of it, but if you've got your head on the ground, your brain is screaming, what's happening, what's happening? All goes back to, you will find with any of these things, if you look at your threat and face the discomfort, the anxiety is gone. If you linger, if you hide from it, the anxiety is painful. And I think that's one of the things which makes people in this depressed, they're isolated, they're lonely, they're anxious, they're scared, or not even as bad, where they're just scared and they think going to the gym or doing this, talking to someone or this and that will be the most uncomfortable thing. It's because they're not used to it, right? They're not used to it. And if they just do small steps or medium steps or big steps, don't do anything really stupid, but I don't need to worry about speaking to this person. Because when you're in this state, you get scared. You think going to the gym is bad. You think people are going to judge you and you're just out of practice. You have to wear your body. Your brain will be screaming if you get everything easy and you get every single bit of your social interaction on the internet and this and that. Because the truth is, there's something you need which you're not getting. It's one of our biological needs. Our biggest need is God. If you're screaming for something and you don't know what it is, it's probably God and Jesus. I'm not gonna lie to you. So if you actually face a challenge from such a long time without going with challenge, you'll find you're much more nervous, you're much less confident, you're actually probably much less good at whatever the challenge is. Most of these challenges, especially most of the stuff I mentioned, going to the gym, talking to people, it's stuff you can do. It's pretty much stuff you can do, even if you don't think you can do it. If you're understanding the words that I'm saying, you probably have it in you to have a conversation with someone. You know what I'm saying? If you're really in the dirt with the social stuff, then it might take more practice. But I almost guarantee, even if that's the case, that'll be all good, and it won't take as long as you expect it to. Especially if you go into it with the right mentality and you go to the gym and you quit porn and you turn to God, it's all these good things. But most of you probably aren't even in that position. So I guarantee, if you just speak to people, it'll be fine. And if it isn't, I was watching another YouTuber saying this, you will be blessed by making a mistake, or you will be blessed by failure. If you mess up in a conversation or anything, people think it's the end of the world, and obviously, we don't want to fail. But when we fail, it's our brain activates, it turns on, and this is the exact same as facing discomfort. It's your mind starts firing. You're not in this this pleasure, anxious mind state. You're not. Your brain starts to reactivate, and you're oh, I'm a human. I have the same DNA as my ancestors who were going out and hunting wild animals, you know what I'm saying? And we also have the forbidden fruit in our DNA, so I'm not saying it's all perfect, but as the forbidden fruit, death comes with that, life comes with Jesus, so it's all good. But when you do scroll through TikTok, watch porn, first of all, these are weapons literally against you, you know what I'm saying? First of all, against your mental health, your body and your soul. Secondly, you realize pleasures is chewing gum. This is my metaphor. It's you do it and it feels good, and as soon as you stop chewing it, you realize it's nothing. It's your body thought you were eating, but you weren't eating. You were, and this applies to a lot of. This isn't against all pleasure, but against a lot of indulgent pleasures, against a lot of pleasures. Most meaningless pleasures, most bad pleasures, most lust, most sin. Except with sin and the bad pleasures, it's not just chewing gum. It's chewing gum you know, slowly making you depressed and anxious and taking you away from God, and honestly leading you away from heaven and leading to the destruction of your soul. In this pleasure mind state, in this, your brain is soft, your brain doesn't want to face the discomfort, but when you face it, you kind of snap out of it, and you kind of realize you're living in a delusion, you're living in a fantasy, and you're most likely trapped in your thoughts. Pursue what's good, despite it being uncomfortable. Maybe that's a better way to look at it. Cold showers are excellent for a first step, simply because they're not actually that painful, but they're scary. So you get the discomfort and you get rewarded from facing it, because, oh, now your body is more resistant to the stress hormone. Face it, your body adapts, and you like see the world so differently, and you realize you were so like disconnected from reality, so disconnected where your body feels like it should be. You might even, you know, if you start doing this, some of the stuff I say about God might even resonate with you, because when you don't face it, your body is trapped in feeling mode. It's all about your, not just emotions, but your pleasure, your dopamine, your sensations, what's comfortable, what makes you relax, what's peaceful, but also your stress and your anxieties and your thoughts and this and that, because it goes both ways. A lot of the way I think the devil and even this society works is it just constantly stresses people out and lies to people and burdens people with like certain stuff in school and work. I'm not saying working or school or education is bad at all, but a lot of the time the way it's done is it's just depressing, it's overburdening, and it's like you get into this deprived state, and the only way you think you can wind down is by indulging in pleasure. But it's not true. And if you just like are in that stress and you just make the decision to sit in it and do something good and face the discomfort and not indulge in pleasure, you will find you have 10 times more power over both anxiety, pleasure and stress, and it's beautiful. Beautiful. What I'm saying is like honestly, man, I'm not lying. I mean, hopefully it sounds like, hopefully you can hear that this is just true, it's rational, it's common sense, but it's like, it's beautiful, man. And you know, don't just be someone that listens to stuff like this, do it, man. It ain't as hard as you think, but you gotta just make a few first steps. You just gotta build up the momentum of facing discomfort, okay? If you're just able to sit in the feeling of discomfort without panicking, without thinking it's the end of the world, I think your body just calms down, and it actually like makes more sense, you know. Hard things become easy because you realize like it's not gonna be pain forever. Most of the things you think are painful or hard work, whatever feeling you may have now, I don't know, let's say about the gym, about overcoming sin, quitting a bad habit, being more social, the anxiety and pain, this is a trick. Getting into the shell and getting into isolating this and that plays on you, is because reality becomes your thoughts, and when you do this, it's like not actually painful forever. That's what you realize. It's like, oh, there's this like initial hard step. Sometimes start facing it, it becomes easier, it becomes good, and you're like, damn. Probably like I look back and some of the things I'm like, wow, I was worried about the stupidest stuff ever. Why was I worried about that? Also, evil and lies are very real things. Know that, but just without getting worried or paranoid, just know that you can't be against yourself. You can't be beating yourself up. You can't. Don't. Stop. Like, you got to be on your own side, not in pride. Do things that are good for yourself. Treat yourself like you're someone else you're helping, that you actually care about, and you'll probably find you're treating yourself horribly. You know what I'm saying? You'll probably find before you were treating yourself like someone else, you're treating yourself kind of horribly. It's what Jordan Peterson says, you know? Treat yourself good, not in like a... Don't indulge in pleasures. That's not being kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Don't shame yourself. Do things which are good for yourself. Teach yourself to overcome discomfort. Put it before God. Turn to God. Know you're flawed. You and I and everybody else are flawed human beings. But by God's mercy and grace, He sent Jesus Christ so that we can believe on Him and be saved. And if you're curious, read the book Matthew. I'll link it in the description. Just start reading it, or the book John. The first few chapters just set it up, but by chapter 4, solid wisdom, solid beauty, solid spiritual wisdom, so good, and you'll maybe understand Jesus a bit more. Take it in small steps if you want, small and consistent, but it's much, much, much easier than you think. Pray to God, believe in Jesus, pray to God for him to come into your life and Jesus to come into your life, and you'll find it's beautiful. I'm not lying. God doesn't always answer one's prayers directly though. It's what you gotta understand, it's God's will, not necessarily yours. So you have to, you know, if you're praying, you also got to think, is what I'm praying for the benefit of, you know, what's good with God, what's good for others, and what may be good for me in terms of God's will, you know. But God is kind. I'm not promising it being perfectly easy, but the mind's a liar sometimes. God bless. Praise God. Have a blessed day.